This program is brought to you by the Genesis Communications Network, a world leader in talk radio since 1998. Visit GCNlive.com today.
You're in the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
With Gene and Chris on the Paracast, we've got a really fascinating episode for you later today. But right now, I wanted to talk about briefly, or maybe not so briefly, the appearance last week of Artie Six Killer Clark, who is the Star People expert. She's talked to Native Americans about a host of experiences. And before we get into the details, because I think it was a very impressive session, we did not get a lot of response.
Yeah, the silence is deafening.
Now, in terms of the actual downloads, they were pretty high. Our download level and the number of unique listeners we have every month continues to go up, which is really good. But this one didn't have any controversy attached to it. And that's part of what you see. And this is true anywhere. So, for example, you go on a site like Google or Apple to look at how people review software. If they have a problem, they're going to be up there complaining. If they don't have a problem, they don't bother. So I'm seeing the same thing here and the same phenomenon at play, probably, that most people listen to the show and they enjoyed it. And obviously a lot of people downloaded the episode, but she didn't say anything terribly controversial.
No, and she had a fun time. She's volunteered to be a fill-in guest. She said, call me anytime. I really like being on with you guys. She likes that the conversation kind of goes all over the spectrum. She's not used to that, so she had a lot of fun.
Well, it gives her a chance to actually think about things, because quite often on a lot of these shows, the questions fall in a specific range. Sometimes a publisher will send you talking points with a guest. And you can bet that George Norrie is going to read that talking points, because they have
we don't need those stinking talking points.
Exactly. The point being here is that we don't have the list of questions. I mean, it's not that we may not make a note. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. But the question will often follow the answers. And sometimes we'll just journey into different areas. And because our listeners are putting questions in the question bank, that takes us to other realms that we didn't think about. Of course, we won't always get the question you want. Sometimes a listener will say, hey, you didn't ask this question. Why? Well, we don't read your mind. I mean, Chris maybe does, but, you know.
You can only cover so many questions. When we get sometimes we have 50, 60 questions, and it's virtually impossible to get them all asked. And oftentimes questions posed or answered through conversation with our guest, and there's no need to ask the question because we've already had that conversation. So
this is part of it also, is that sometimes people ask questions, but they're not questions, they're opinions.
Yeah, well, those generally get ignored.
Yeah, in fact, what we try to do as much as possible is, if the subject matter in our question bank drifts into opinions, we say no. Start a new thread or topic. Wait till the guest is on.
Well, I always view lack of response, afterwards on the forums as like you put it, as a sign of people enjoying the show and not really needing to, usually the negative comments are the ones that are posted. And, like when we first had Artie on, and I was kind of accused of badgering her a little bit because I was really frustrated that there was really no dates and times and, data points that were associated with most actually of her accounts. And she just kind of made a point of saying, look, that's not what I'm doing. I'm collecting stories. It's kind of like a J.C. Johnson or a Tom Dongo. There's other folks out there that are more interested in the folklore aspect of this as opposed to trying to establish data points. So I look at things a little bit more hard-boiled, and I try to look at these things as journalistically and as an amateur scientist as best I can. And to me, it's important to document the date and time and, the actual particulars of the event in such a way that it's reliable data for others to down the road to use. So, not everybody thinks like that. So, I've just had to, kind of bite my tongue and accept people's approaches for the kinds of things that we can ascertain from them, which to me is diminished by not collecting those data points. But hey, it's entertaining stuff. J.C. Johnson, classic example, one of my favorite fireside storytellers.
Not that it isn't worth trying to put something together about them, because, the thing here is the way the culture influences these accounts of star people, because it appears that the cases that happen now are more like UFO abductions. And what that goes to show is, how did people interpret what we call a UFO abduction 2,000 years ago? And it's interesting to see how that changes according to the culture. So I think there's a lot of really good stuff there. And I thought that was really an important thing to talk about. Very important thing to talk about here, because we're trying to understand what's happening to people. And it obviously is not something you take literally, because if you do, how do you explain the dichotomy between what they were described as back years ago, decades, centuries ago, as to what they're described now to be like?
Right.
Is it just our cultural growth, or is it because we interpret something we can't understand in a way that makes sense to us? This is why when I hear people talk about, for example, these screen memories of owls and things that supposedly indicate you were abducted, I think the abduction itself may be the screen memory for something else that we don't know about.
Yeah, good point.
Because if it's so easy to simply hypnotize somebody and get the memories of their encounter, if E.T. really wanted that not to happen, to keep that stuff hidden, they could do it.
You would think. I mean, that's the automatic assumption.
Sure, it's like Stanton Friedman and using radar to disable a flying saucer, that the radar disabled the flying saucer and made it crash into another flying saucer. Give me a break. That's low-level stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the, my area of, I would say, more advanced knowledge about star people as it isn't interpreted by Native American cultures, especially. My area of concentration has been the Pueblo people, and I was a little surprised that Artie wasn't as up to speed on Kachina lore, the three different types of Kachinas, and the actual overlord Kachinas. It could almost be described in sort of a Christian way as being angels, archangels, and what each of these three different types are responsible for, and how come they don't come here anymore. According to the Pueblo people, they stopped coming at the behest of the people. The people said, "Look, you're not returning our folks, so we'll honor your influence in our culture, and we'll make sure that you're always kept alive in our culture. But we'll do this if you don't come here." And so there is kind of the underlying sort of unspoken inference that there was a lot more contact in the distant past, and possibly there's little, if any, contact now. So, I wanted to get into those areas with her, but unfortunately, she's really not as up to speed on the Pueblo system as one would think she would be.
Tell us briefly in 30 seconds about our guest today.
Wow. We're so fortunate to get Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove here. He rarely does radio. And one of the few books that I have dragged around since college is his seminal work, The Roots of Consciousness, which is arguably the go-to encyclopedia for anyone interested in the study of consciousness. And it's going to be a real treat to have him on the show. I do highly, highly recommend this book. It's been a Bible for me since 1975 when it came out. He's since gone on to dive into other areas such as the spirituality ties to consciousness and other things. We're going to have a great show with him.
All about consciousness coming up with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
The award-winning graphic converter, the universal genius for photo editing on your Mac. Join over 1.5 million loyal users for this Swiss Army knife photo editing app. It gives you all you expect from a top-flight image editing app with tons of features, and most important, it's easy to use. Get 20% off from lemkesoft.de/Gene. That's lemkesoft.de/Gene. Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code LEGENDARY to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
Are you happy washing your hands with harsh chemicals? Are you happy doing laundry with detergents? Are you happy paying high prices? Find your happiness with Pure Soap. These all-natural, earth-friendly Pure Soaps are the very best you've ever used. Buy in bulk. Get a 12, 36, or 48-month supply, or get items individually and still save big. You're getting soap products twice as good as what you're using now, earth-friendly and natural soaps. Your family deserves the best. Happiness is 5starsoap.com. Why not put your money up the drain for a change? See them at 5starsoap.com or call 1-800-340-7091 for a catalog. Cal Ben Soap Company can save you thousands of dollars and give you good old-fashioned real soaps that are triple concentrated. Soaps made from vegetable and coconut oils. See their full selection of soaps at 5starsoap.com. That's F-I-V-E starsoap.com. Or call 1-800-340-7091 for a catalog.
By now you know that wireless technology like cell phones do in fact pose dangers to the health and privacy of everyone. Blockit Pocket's wide range of products are unmatched in providing the protection you deserve. No scare tactics, just common sense. BlockitPocket.com offers quality American-made options to alleviate and eliminate these invisible dangers. Learn more at BlockitPocket.com or call 888-315-9618. BlockitPocket.com, enhancing health and privacy.
Dangerous blood clot device alert. If you or a loved one had an IVC filter placed to prevent blood clots from traveling to your heart or lungs and suffered an injury, you may be entitled to substantial financial compensation. The FDA warns that IVC filters may cause serious complications, such as heart or lung damage, internal bleeding, and even death. These dangerous blood clot devices can break, and the metal fragments can travel to your heart or lungs, causing serious injuries. If you or a loved one suffered organ damage or other injuries from an IVC filter, you may be entitled to substantial financial compensation. Act now. Time is limited to file a claim. For a free consultation and free information, call Injury Help Desk at 800-478-1507. 800-478-1507. 800-478-1507. This is an advertisement. Paid non-attorney spokesperson. InjuryHelpDesk.com is responsible for this advertisement. Principal office, Las Vegas, Nevada.
How confident are you in your food storage? If it was all you had to rely on, would it sustain your family? Hard times, good times, or any time, NuManna Storable Food is the proven superior choice. Learn for yourself what happened when one man ate only NuManna Storable Food for an entire month. Online at PowerPrepper.com. That's PowerPrepper.com. Experience the NuManna difference.
American-made food stores I love to eat. Yum!
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Back on the Paracast, I want to remind our listeners we have a special feature of the show. This is the gold standard of gold standards called the Paracast Plus. And what we offer with Paracast Plus is the ability to hear a commercial-free version of this show, better quality audio, plus the exclusive After the Paracast podcast every week, plus lots of other features for a low subscription fee. Our price cheap. Go to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. Our guest, Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, joins us for the first time on the Paracast. Thank you for coming. We've really anticipated your appearance.
Pleasure to be with you.
Now, in focusing on human consciousness, and I always like to ask someone about their background. You've been doing this for a long time. What led you into this field of study? I mean, when you were a kid and your parents said, what do you want to be when you grow up? What did you want to be?
Oh, as a child, I had a very conventional upbringing. I thought I'd go into business. My father ran a furniture store, and I always imagined that I'd probably take over that store. But by the time I got to college, my interests widened, and I began to pursue an interest in religious mysticism, and largely from the viewpoint of a skeptic. I was one of the founders of the Undergraduate Psychology Student Association back in the 1960s at the University of Wisconsin, and I wrote a senior honors thesis on the psychology of religious mysticism with the idea that I would be able to show what sort of psychopathologies led people to form the mistaken belief that they were having mystical experiences. But by the time I completed my research, I realized that these experiences were quite authentic and that I had to change my perspective altogether.
Well, unfortunately, I think some people look at something and never change. What was the thing about it that spoke to you and said, these are real things happening to these people and not just something that they're imagining or whatever?
Well, one of the strongest influences was a book by the psychologist Abraham Maslow. It was called Toward a Psychology of Being, and he interviewed some of the brightest people in our society, people like Albert Einstein and Helen Keller, and he determined that the great geniuses of society pretty much all had mystical experiences, and that these were very positive and inspirational for them.
Kind of reminds me of René Descartes on his way back from Bohemia as a young army soldier of fortune, having an angel come to him in a dream and tell him that the secret to nature is measurement and number, which gave rise to the rational reductionist materialistic science. So I bet you most scientists don't realize that the real start of the scientific method came as in the form of an angel in a dream.
Well, the study of dreams is fascinating. There are many, many breakthroughs in science, not just science, but history as well, that come out of dreams. And also, my life was changed by dreams.
Really? Do tell.
Yes. Well, I went into graduate school at Berkeley in criminology. And I got very frustrated. I was doing graduate field research at San Quentin Prison, and I made a decision for myself that I wanted to switch. I enjoyed studying human deviance, but I wanted to study positive forms of deviance rather than negative. I was really interested in studying the great mystics, creative people, psychics, rather than criminals and people who were mentally ill. And I discovered, to my disappointment, there were no opportunities to do that at the University of California.
Wait a minute. You're talking Berkeley in the 60s. What's wrong with that picture?
Well, you might think, there was an enormous interest in the community, but not in the university. You could study psychopathology all you wanted, but they had no programs in parapsychology, intuition, creativity, or mysticism, none. I agonized about this for months and months, and one day I knew with a great certainty that I was going to have a dream that night, and I'd find the answer in the dream. I had a very powerful dream. I was visiting some friends across the town at Berkeley. I got to their apartment, knocked on the door. Nobody was there. And in the dream, I knew where they kept their key. I took the key, let myself into their apartment, and there in the middle of the living room floor was sitting a magazine called EYE. I picked up the magazine, and as I was paging through it in my dream, I woke up with this feeling that I had found the answer. But I had no idea what the answer was. So I acted out the dream. I put on my tennis shoes, ran across town, got to this very apartment, knocked on the door. Nobody was home, just as I had dreamt. And in fact, I knew where they kept the key, right under the doormat. So I found it and let myself in, walked into the living room. There, in the middle of the living room floor, was a magazine, and it was called Focus. And I began paging through it, and that magazine literally brought focus to my life. It was the magazine of listener-sponsored radio and television in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I made a decision at that moment that I would pursue my interests by getting involved in the media, in listener-sponsored media, which was odd because at the time I did not own a radio or a TV. And in fact, I was such a long-haired hippie, I didn't believe in electronic communication back then. I thought it was all phony baloney. But I changed my mind. I went over to KPFA in Berkeley, the local Pacifica radio station, and offered to volunteer. Even though I had a master's degree at the time, they said, that's good. You can sit at this desk, and when you hear the doorbell ring, you push this button right here to let people in the front door. And I was happy to do that. And within 3 weeks, I had learned quite a bit about radio production. I produced a program about local psychics in the Berkeley community, and the program director came to me and said, well, we have a slot here for a program called The Mind's Ear. You're supposed to interview leading authors in the fields of psychology and philosophy and related areas. And all of a sudden, I found myself twice a week sitting at a table with world-class experts. My life had become instantly transformed, and that gave me the confidence to create an individual, interdisciplinary doctoral major at the University of California at Berkeley in parapsychology. And I completed that degree 7 years later in 1980. Today, it remains still the only doctoral diploma in parapsychology ever awarded by an accredited university anywhere in the world.
That's amazing.
Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, parapsychology. And I have a couple of questions about what you've told us so far that I want to get to. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
In these uncertain times, it makes sense to have a sustainable backup method to cook food and boil water. If your current plan includes using a fuel-burning stove or cooking over an open fire, then there's a much better way. The Minuteman Rocket Stove is a biomass-burning cooking stove that only requires small quantities of sticks and twigs for fuel. The Minuteman Stove is easy to use, smokeless, portable, powerful, and sustainable. For the finest in survival cooking stoves and fire starters made right here in the USA, go to MinutemanStove.com. That's MinutemanStove.com.
Are the answers to your present and future hidden in your past? Akashic readings help you learn to unlock the answers for love, finances, weight loss, self-esteem, confusion, grief and loss, and more. Akashic email readings by Dr. Kelly Maroon, Ph.D. are specially priced right now. Learn more at Dr. Kelly Maroon's website, AkashicUniversal.com, spelled AKASHIC Universal.com. Change your life today. Become one with your true path with intention on purpose. Visit AkashicUniversal.com.
Hi, Peter Vaccaro for ParanormalDate.com. Are you looking for love in all the wrong places? Now you have a chance to change that by signing up for free at ParanormalDate.com. This incredible dating site puts people of like minds together. People who are interested in the strange, the unusual, mysteries, ghosts, UFOs, and the afterlife, and so much more. ParanormalDate.com was developed for you, people seeking a viable alternative to the other dating services. You can join for free by going to ParanormalDate.com, and if you decide you like it and want to connect with people, use the code GEORGE for a substantial discount. Mark Rawlings, president of ParanormalDate.com, says so many people hunger to share their experiences about the paranormal, the unexplainable, or the afterlife, and so much more, and this is the source for them to meet and share that common interest. So sign up for free at ParanormalDate.com, ParanormalDate.com, and use the code GEORGE if you decide to connect with someone you like.
Are you tired of commuting to a job that makes someone else rich? Working harder than ever, but getting nowhere? Do you hate spending hundreds of dollars every week on daycare? Having someone else raise your children? With our opportunities, you can start earning money as soon as next week. You get to be the boss, work from home, and live a happier life. At Be the Boss Network, you'll find hundreds of work-from-home opportunities that you can literally start today and be earning money as soon as next week. Go to freedom106.com and start earning money as soon as next week. You get to be the boss. Get out of the rat race. Work from home. Go to freedom106.com right now and change your life today. That's freedom, the number 106.com. Go to freedom106.com and start earning money as soon as next week. You be the boss. Go to freedom106.com.
You haven't experienced yogurt until you've tried a Mossy, embodying health and flavor in a true whole milk, green-fed dairy beverage. Every sip pays homage to our old world cows and the ancient culturing methods their milk benefits from. With over 30 probiotics, a Mossy's undeniably nutritious, refined, cultured sensation bolsters your health and awakens your passion for dairy. A Mossy's so good, and you need to try it. Contact your Youngevity distributor or call 877-878-4203 or go to gcnteam.com.
Are you living your passion? Are you pumped to go to work because you get to talk about or work with or do the things that interest you the most? Is working, playing, and relaxing one and the same? As long as you're working for someone else, you'll never be living entirely true to yourself and your passion. I'm Pharmacist Keith. Let me show you how you can work around your current schedule, create the extra income so you can live your passion. Visit radio.recordedvideo.com. That's radio.recordedvideo.com. radio.recordedvideo.com.
Hey, this is Marie D. Jones, the author of This Book is from the Future, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove is joining us on the Paracast. And before we get into you establishing this program and then completing it, I'm interested in when you actually went to this other place, this other residence, and you found the key and you entered. Did you ever think, what's going to happen if the police come over and they catch you for breaking and entering? That's the first thing that came to my mind. Breaking and entering.
You know, these were good friends of mine, and I don't think they would have minded. But in any case, the thought never passed through my mind.
Well, I want to know, what you think about a precognitive dream like that. How is that possible that a person can have a dream of something that is yet to happen and have the almost to the exact detail this come true? What are we looking at here? How is this possible?
Well, there are various theories about it. For example, some people say you can't really see the future because the future hasn't happened yet. But what you can see are the probabilities of what might happen. The actual probabilities exist in a kind of quantum geometry. So that's one point of view. Another point of view is that, well, actually the future has happened. All time, past, present, and future really exists. And if we can just step outside of what we think is the present moment, then we can access future realities. So it's controversial. We don't have a good theoretical handle on this yet. There are various experiments that are being done, and I would say the weight of those experiments is that what people see when they look into the future is the probability patterns that exist in the present moment.
So there are ways then to possibly change it. Now, when you talk about the past, the future, the present, and I think now the interest we've had in sci-fi over time travel over the years. There's always a time travel TV show. We've got 2 this year, Frequency and Timeless. People going back through time, doing things. And we get back to that paradox. If you go back through time and you change an event, and sneezing in the wrong direction could change an event, or stepping on an insect, does that mean that what happens then was meant to be, or you've altered it like the comic book Flashpoint from The Flash?
Well, the problem is that you're using examples from fiction to illustrate your argument, and we don't know very much about whether time travel is possible at all. But I can tell you this, that physicists who look at it suggest that one way to resolve the paradox of, well, what if you go back in time and kill your parents or kill your grandparents so you never even existed? How can you resolve a paradox like that? And one way to resolve it would be through what is known as the many worlds interpretation of quantum theory, where every possible world actually exists somewhere. So if you end up killing your grandparents, it's not as if you cease to exist. You just jump into a different possibility.
When you say that, I think, why do people differ so much on what they remember about their lives? And is it that we're constantly moving in and out of realities, and therefore we're interacting with other people who may not share those experiences or superficially share them, but as a matter of fact, they lived in a different reality? I mean, I like to change my reality right now, but I don't want to get into that.
Well, we all have a kind of private consciousness. It's one of the main criteria for being a conscious entity. William James noticed it right away. My consciousness is based on my unique history as a human being, and yours is based on your unique history, and we're very different. When I wake up in the morning, I never have your memories. I only have my own.
Yeah. Well, one thing that should probably be mentioned here is there has been some very interesting work done by Dean Radin, who has done some very impressive experiments that have sort of, the end result is that the actual human body responds to events slightly before they happen. And he's been able to measure some sort of, physical response to stimuli, let's say, just prior to the stimuli occurring. So there does appear to be some sort of precursor type process that's going on. Maybe you could put that in a little better terms for us. And I'm sure you're familiar with this work of Radin's.
Yeah, it's been replicated maybe in a dozen different laboratories now. It's known as the presentiment effect. And the notion is that even before we become consciously aware of some stimulus, perhaps even before the stimulus is presented to us, our physiology picks up on it. So they may show people pictures that are either frightening or maybe sexually stimulating, and they're doing physiological measurements, galvanic skin response, for example. And what they've been able to demonstrate is that even before the stimulus is presented, and it's presented randomly, of course, the body seems to know it's about to happen, and there'll be a fear response or an arousal response right before. Within maybe seconds or even fractions of a second before the stimulus is presented. So it certainly suggests that the human body itself acts as, I call it, an intuitive antenna.
Right.
So it's part of it also that if we get in touch with this process, maybe we'd have some of these abilities?
Well, I think it'd probably be very useful if you're a poker player, if you are trading in the stock market, or
a hockey goalie.
For athletes often talk about entering into the zone where they seem to know in advance what's about to happen, and where great moments of athletic performance occur. But it probably could happen in almost any profession, from police to firefighters. You hear quite a bit about it from soldiers in the battlefield.
Yeah. Well, and that's just looking at that's looking at a person that has an unaltered, let's say, maybe obviously endorphins and chemicals in the body are involved. But what about perturbing consciousness with psychotropics and that sort of thing? Do we see any indications that that there's a heightened level of presentience or some sort of precursor scenario that happens when the mind is being perturbed by let's say theogens or whatever?
By drugs.
By drugs.
Let's start with visionary vegetables, because there's a lot of folklore that people who take psychedelic drugs, even marijuana, have enhanced psychic capacities. But the research that's been done doesn't really provide strong evidence for that at all. There are other ways to enhance consciousness through auditory stimulation, through hypnosis, through meditation, and the research does show that by quieting your mind, you do enhance extrasensory perception.
We've got a lot more to go with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, who just happens to be the first person on the planet to get a doctorate in parapsychology, and at least for now, the only person to receive a doctorate in parapsychology from a major university. How about that? So much more to come, and we have questions from you listeners about different aspects. We want to get into covering that as well. So you're on with Gene, and with Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
You are listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
We also have swag. We have all these exclusive Paracast things that you can buy. We've got 60 or so different items, and entails t-shirts, sleeves for notebook computers, iPad cases, mouse pads, the Paracast Jumbo tote bag, all sorts of t-shirts and jackets and stuff like that for men and women. We have a Paracast aluminum water bottle. All this stuff, you go to store.theparacast.com, store.theparacast.com. What makes it special is that the items are the best quality, great t-shirts, fabrics, and they have our official logo on them. That's what makes them special, in multiple sizes and colors. We even have stuff for children, stuff for women, stuff for men. We have all sorts of sizes, like small up to X large. A lot of good stuff. That's the swag from the Paracast. You go to store.theparacast.com, stop by, and take a shopping tour.
Has neck, back, or shoulder pain got you down? Go to sunshine-pillows.com and get soothing comfort, support, and pain relief fast. Their microwavable heat therapy pillows and wraps treat neck and shoulder pain, reduce stress, and relax the soul. An ergonomic pillow from Sunshine Pillows supports your head and neck on long trips or when simply resting at home. Be good to yourself. Visit sunshine-pillows.com. sunshine-pillows.com.
Are the answers to your present and future hidden in your past? Akashic readings help you learn to unlock the answers for love, finances, weight loss, self-esteem, confusion, grief and loss, and more. Akashic email readings by Dr. Kelly Maroon, Ph.D. are specially priced right now. Learn more at Dr. Kelly Maroon's website, akashicuniversal.com, spelled AKASHIC universal.com. Change your life today. Become one with your true path with intention on purpose. Visit akashicuniversal.com.
Worried about lead, fluoride, and other contaminants in your drinking water? Get a ProPure with the Pro 1G 2.0 cleanable reusable filter and remove up to 200 contaminants. Drink water the way nature meant it to be. Clean, crisp, and refreshing. See the complete line of ProPure products, including the new ProMax shower filter. There's a ProPure for you. Visit your authorized ProPure dealer for details or ProPureUSA.com. That's ProPureUSA.com.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson of the Genesis Communications Network. Over the 30-plus years I've been in finance, I can see that the world economy is now at a critical point. Unlimited money creation and runaway debt could trigger a collapse of the financial system. It's imperative that you protect yourself in case of hyperinflation or even deflation. Investment Rarities has put together a survival bag of 200 silver quarters. These 90% silver quarters are dated 1964 and earlier. Each quarter is worth almost $5. If a quarter has already reached $5, the trend is obviously on your side. These survival bags sell for $8.95 delivered. Call 800-328-1860 to order today. Not only can these quarters be used for barter in a brief period of hyperinflation, they have the potential to appreciate 5 to 10 times. Call 800-328-1860. Get one for each member of your family. Call 800-328-1860. That's 800-328-1860.
Hunters, anglers, campers, and survivalists. Get back to nature. Expand your horizons with the highest quality, most versatile, unique slingshots and sling bows on the market at slingbow.com. Slingbow products are compact and models start from just $17.98. They're perfect for your bug-out bag or storing in your vehicle. Give yourself and your loved ones the excitement and tradition of slingbow, a new frontier in archery and truly modern twist on this primitive survival tool. Feel the thrill only at slingbow.com.
This is Kurt Sotheby, author of UFO Mysteries, and you're listening to the Paracast.
With Gene and Chris in the Paracast, Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove is gracing us by spending the time with us and showing us different things. You know, when you talk about the fact that the human body anticipates things before an actual event, I almost think in terms of animals. They're very good at that. So, of course, I'll see our dog coming over in anticipation we're going to do something a few minutes from now. And he always gets it right. And I don't know what kind of signs he's picking up because I'm not doing anything, but he gets the message.
Well, or animals and earthquakes.
Sure.
Yes, there's a lot of folklore about that, and there's even been some interesting research studies with mice and with cockroaches where they put them into devices where they'll get electric shocks on one half of the device and no shock on the other half, and they seem to know which side of the device is the safe one to be on, even though the shocks are administered at random.
Oh, that's interesting. And also the work of Rupert Sheldrake and the whole idea of morphogenic fields and some of the examples that he's been able to come up with to show that there seems to be an underlying interconnectedness between like animals, let's say, or like intelligences or lack of intelligences. I think the most famous would be the monkeys instantly learning in Japan how to wash the sand off potatoes. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there's been other studies too, mice that have never run a particular maze. As soon as one figures it out, the rest kind of know how to do the maze. How do we look at that sort of research and explain that?
Rupert Sheldrake has developed a theory. He calls it the theory of morphogenetic fields. And he suggests that once, let's say, monkeys in one island have learned through happenstance that if they wash the potatoes off, they'll taste better, then all of a sudden monkeys in other islands separated by miles start exhibiting the same behavior. So that's the theory. Obviously, it involves some sort of paranormal communication, and because of that, it's very controversial. We live in a materialistic era, and in spite of 150 years of empirical research on psychic phenomenon, the mainstream of academia still pretty much ignores it, which is one of the reasons why, even after 36 years, I'm still the only person who's ever gotten a doctoral diploma in parapsychology. I should add, however, that there are many good researchers, such as Rupert Sheldrake and Dean Radin, whom you've mentioned earlier, who are doing excellent work in the field. They don't need to have a doctoral diploma in parapsychology to do that.
You know, it's very interesting here. You're the only one who got this degree. Has anyone other than you tried?
Well, yes. Let me put it this way. There are probably about 200 people in the world who have done doctoral dissertations on parapsychological topics. What makes me unique is that I actually created an individual interdisciplinary program that was named parapsychology. And I have a unique perspective because I attempted to integrate a lot of ancient philosophy and contemporary folklore into the field. I try to establish the field as one that's been around for centuries. But people like Dean Radin, Charlie Tart, Rupert Sheldrake, they've gotten their degrees in psychology or physics or philosophy, and they're doing perfectly legitimate work in the field.
Chris?
It's really difficult to bang up against the entrenched good old boy network in the scientific community, especially subjects like UFOs, any sort of paranormal subjects. It's just a kiss of death, and it's a kiss of death in the scientific and academic communities. Do you see any hope for this ever changing? Do you see any movement towards more openness within these communities towards these subjects?
Well, I'm very optimistic that eventually there will be. And in fact, if you read the scientific journals carefully, you'll see that in many non-parapsychological journals, there are research reports being published that address, often in a unintentional way, and address the possibilities of psychic functioning, particularly research in physics, but also in biology and in psychology. So one of the reasons that I've set up the new Thinking Aloud video channel that I've been hosting interviews on for the last 15 months is to leave a legacy, so that eventually when universities and colleges offer degree programs in parapsychology, there will be a body of material there, and people will be able to experience firsthand the work of researchers who may no longer be alive by the time the academic world wakes up.
Yeah. We're not holding our breath. You should probably add. I think we're going to have to lose a whole generation of good old boys before that happens. Although, we're, I think, well on our way. Your book, I must say, The Roots of Consciousness, has been a bit of a Bible for me ever since college. It's one of the few books that survived all my moves. Since then, it's all dog-eared and, pages are falling out. But I still have my original copy of this book, which should, I think, and is still considered an encyclopedia in the study of consciousness. A lot of your work, as you mentioned prior, is looking at ancient cultures and the connecting points between some of the spiritual traditions and how consciousness plays a part in some very, very sophisticated and long established systems of belief. What do you think of this whole new sort of fascination with ancient aliens? And I mean, we're talking about a show that should have maybe lasted 2 or 3 seasons, and they've been able to milk the cow going into their 9th year. What do you think about this? Do you think that this is something that that you anticipated, or and how do you look at this kind of pop cultural view of this whole potential subject area?
Yeah, I think that some of the writers who are promoting the ancient alien idea are stretching the evidence quite a lot. Many of the things that von Daniken writes about, for example, don't hold up. However, the notion that we may have been visited long ago by aliens, either from other planetary systems or perhaps other dimensions of time and space, is plausible and deserves our attention. Who were these ancient gods that seem to have had so much influence in the formation of the belief systems of humanity several thousand years ago?
Now, when you mention von Daniken's claims not holding up, because he latches on to a lot of the stuff that other people who are interested in ancient astronauts have talked about. Indeed, I think to many members of the Paracast audience, they know that Eric von Daniken was far, far from the first person to be talking about ancient astronauts. You can go back in the early 1950s, and Desmond Leslie, who wrote that other section of George Adamski's Flying Saucers Have Landed. You could certainly talk about that interesting character, Yona Fortner, who wrote for Jim Moseley's Saucer News. And also, of course, you could talk about Brinsley Le Portrench, a British UFO writer who wrote a book about the Sky People, among other works that covered ancient astronauts. So in what respect do you think that maybe his stuff doesn't make it for you? And we have to break in about a minute, so let's at least start the answer now, Jeff.
Well, we could go over it detail by detail. I'm not a great expert. I have a lot of skepticism about the network of underground caves extending for thousands of miles. I don't think that holds up as one example. I think maybe the simplest way is to say that probably 50% of everything von Daniken writes about is inaccurate, and we don't always know which 50% it is.
Yeah.
Well, that certainly really doesn't help, does it? Oh, well. I'm going to ask you when we get back after the break to maybe tell us, if we're looking for information about that possibility, is there a go-to person and or book to consider? Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove is here with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
There is an affordable alternative to the high cost of healthcare that offers freedom from insurance while providing compliance with the Obamacare individual mandate. Imagine having access to quality, affordable healthcare that allows you the freedom to choose your doctor and hospital. Members can share up to 100% of necessary medical expenses, including some alternative treatments. Find out how you and your family can contain healthcare costs without giving up your freedom. Go to libertyoncall.org. That's libertyoncall.org.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson Adam Pileski of the Pileski Law Firm with principal office in Houston, Texas is the attorney responsible for the content of this ad. This ad is not legal advice, and the choice of a lawyer should not be based solely upon advertisement. Services may not be available in all states. Attention Xarelto users. If you or a loved one took Xarelto and suffered a serious bleeding event, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Xarelto is a popular prescription blood thinner used to prevent blood clots and protect patients from strokes. These serious bleeding events have led to numerous cases of hospitalization and even death. Phone lines are open 24/7. Call 800-261-0937. That's 800-261-0937.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
So the question on the table, Jeff, is there a go-to book or books that we should look for?
With regard to ancient astronauts, I highly recommend the work of Jacques Vallée, who is an astronomer and computer scientist who wrote many, many books, including Passport to Magonia, including The Invisible College. I think he has the most accurate, honest, and realistic handle on UFO phenomenon.
Right, and he's almost a neighbor of yours. You probably know him fairly well, I would imagine.
Well, I've known Jacques since the 1970s, yes.
Yeah.
He's been on the Paracast a couple of times.
Yeah, we've had him on the show a couple of times, and I finally got a chance to meet my hero at the International UFO Congress last year, and man, that was, I'm not a fanboy by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt like a giggling teenager when I saw him walk into the room. You're talking to a real big Jacques Vallée fan. One of the other books that has made all my moves with me is Passport to Magonia and all the other Vallée and Keel books, actually, that I have. So
you're not a fanboy, but should I reveal what you asked me about the fact that a very well-known figure in the consumer audio field is repairing your receiver, and you made a request of what he should do?
Yeah. I have a Carver receiver, which is probably the finest integrated stereo amp and receiver ever made. And I sent it to Bob. Gene knows Bob Carver, and he sent it off to him. And I asked Gene to ask him to autograph it for me. Well, I pick and choose the people that I'm real fans of very carefully. And Jeffrey, you're one of them, man. I find myself, fairly often going back and, when I'm in a particular part of a research process, I'll invariably be opening up your wonderful encyclopedia and getting some inspiration from it. I know being there in the San Francisco area that, of course, you're close to Stanford.
Well, actually, I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh, you're in Las Vegas. Okay.
Yes. I lived in San Francisco for 30 years, but I've been in Las Vegas for the last 15.
So you actually have affordable rent, right? I mean, I had a friend of mine who lived in the Bay Area, and he was just a writer. He couldn't get anything for less than $2,500 or $3,000. He was going crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you spent many years there, and SRI, Stanford Research Institute, is under Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ with the remote viewing work that was done in the 70s and into the 80s. Sandinista, one of our longtime posters at forum.theparacast.com, where you can go ahead and post your questions for our guests. He's wondering, have you been involved at all in the in any sort of experiments or work regarding remote viewing, and what do you think about its efficacy? Do you think it's something that's viable, and what are your thoughts on that subject?
Absolutely. I did my first remote viewing experiment in 1976 at SRI International. And interestingly enough, I mentioned my new video series, New Thinking Aloud. About a year ago, I interviewed Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher, who was the experimenter in that particular series. And she remembered the whole thing quite vividly because I had a beautiful hit. She still talks talks about it in her lectures today. Now we have the International Remote Viewing Association, and there are hundreds and hundreds of people teaching themselves how to do remote viewing and how to apply it for useful purposes.
Wow, that's I think that would be one chink in the armor of your kind of conservative academia and scientific communities. You don't really hear them supporting any sort of positive results in this particular field that has proven to be uncannily accurate. Some people like Pat Price, of course, back Ingo Swann, and others who obviously had sort of, I think, above average talent in this regard, had some amazing hits if you go through the literature. But one thing that I think should be stressed, and I think you would agree, that we all have that ability if we allow ourselves to follow certain protocols and do the kind of inner work that's needed to be open enough to be receptive for it. Is this something? Am I making an accurate statement here? Do you think most people have the ability to remote view?
Well, there are many, many examples of people who didn't think that they had any psychic abilities whatsoever, who attempted to do remote viewing and found that they were very good at it right from the very beginning. So it seems to be a latent talent, but I think it's like all human talents. There's sort of a bell curve. Some people have it to a much greater degree than other people.
The thing I always wonder about remote viewing, and we've done shows on it, we even did a test at one time that was reasonably successful, is the level of accuracy and dependability.
It's difficult to do. I did a series of 10 interviews with Ed May, who was the head of research for the secret U.S. government program, Stargate, that went on for 20 years, from about 1976 to 1996. And one of the points he wanted to emphasize is that in spite of the many brilliant success stories you hear about, overall, it's very difficult work. And you can't expect dramatic successes all the time. They periodically, but they do not occur regularly.
Yeah, I've read it. It's almost like a 50-50 thing with people that are well trained and show above average abilities, that it's not as reliable as you would need, let's say, for intelligence information to act upon, that sort of thing.
Well, there have been some real intelligence successes. And,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a good baseline. My friend Marty Rosenblatt runs an organization of remote viewers. It's called the Applied Precognition Project. He'd be a great guest for you if you haven't interviewed him yet.
We have.
He's been going, as you probably know then, for about 10 years. And during that time, over thousands of trials, his remote viewers have approximately a 60% hit rate on targets where by chance alone it would be 50%. So that's been successful enough for them to make money doing things like investing in stocks and futures and placing wagers on athletic events.
Maybe Sean David Morton should take the class and improve his rate and not lose $3 million of his clients' money.
Is he in jail now, or has he just been fined?
Yeah, I haven't kept up with.
Yeah, I heard that his bail was $100, so he got out.
You know much more about his latest activities than I do.
Yeah. Let's not scrape the bottom of the barrel here, Gene.
Don't bring it up again.
Well, we do have some questions, some very basic questions about the whole subject of human consciousness, and of course, it's quite controversial. We have yet to really, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but come up with a real hard, fast, solid definition or show the operative principles that really kind of allow for human consciousness. The very fact that I can, pick up a pencil is like a PK event, really. There is much controversy in this field. How do you define first of all, human consciousness, or what would your definition be?
Well, I think it's just simply being aware, having experience.
So I think, therefore, I am.
Yeah. One might say that. Philosophers use the term qualia, which might be like the experience of the color blue, having a subjective life, having inner experiences.
Well, I've got a question here from William Strathman, again, who's a poster at forum.theparacast.com, where you can ask questions of our wonderful guests. He says, number one, outstanding. He's very excited that you're going to be on the program. And he's saying, could Dr. Mishlove describe current developments regarding the quote-unquote hard problem of consciousness? How do you personally interpret the evidence?
Let's hold that answer to our next segment. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
The award-winning graphic converter, the universal genius for photo editing on your Mac. Join over 1.5 million loyal users for this Swiss Army knife photo editing app. It gives you all you expect from a top-flight image editing app with tons of features, and most important, it's easy to use. Get 20% off from lemkesoft.de/Gene. That's lemkesoft.de/Gene. Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code LEGENDARY to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
What would your life be like if you woke up each morning with new vitality, feeling better than you have in years, and you noticed a difference in your sleeping patterns, blood sugar levels, and had a sense of well-being overall? There's something that is changing thousands of people's lives, and you could be one of them. It's called Heart and Body Extract. Sharon Harris, co-creator of Heart and Body Extract, talks about the positive effects of Heart and Body Extract.
What happens with the formula Heart and Body Extract is it's giving the body the necessary vitamins, minerals, amino acids, enzymes, and phytonutrients so the body will heal itself. And yes, the body does have the ability to balance blood pressure, balance cholesterol, clean and unclog the arteries. It can also work on balancing the circulation for diabetics. So the body is an amazing thing. It simply needs some help so it has the tools to heal itself.
Heart and Body Extract gets results. To order your 2-month supply, call now, toll free at 866-295-5305. Order online at hbextract.com.
A lot can happen in 6 seconds. A rodeo ride, a dramatic basketball win, and the world record holder can solve a Rubik's Cube. 6 seconds is how long it takes for an 18-wheeler traveling at a safe speed to come to a complete stop. And in those 6 seconds, that truck will travel the length of 2 football fields. So please, give them room. Never cut in front of a large truck for any reason. Our roads, our responsibility. Learn more at sharetheroadsafely.gov.
This is a life-changing message for anyone with sleep apnea who is on the go and tired of dragging around a big, bulky home CPAP device. Now there's finally a portable device that's as small as a soda can and weighs less than a pound. You can even add a battery that's as tiny as a deck of cards. It's the Transcend Mini CPAP, and if you're one of the first 100 callers, you can try Transcend risk-free for 10 days. So call now, 1-800-441-0335. Transcend is the world's first portable mini CPAP device. It gives you the freedom to sleep in total comfort anywhere you are. Our smallest and most advanced portable design ever, Transcend is so small and so light, you can fit it in your briefcase or purse to use anywhere you go. It's FAA compliant too, so you can even sleep comfortably while flying. To guarantee your 10-day in-home trial, you must be one of the first 100 callers to call minicpap.com now. 1-800-441-0335. Again, that's 1-800-441-0335.
Water is the single most important thing your body needs, so you want to be sure it's the best for you and your family. Since 2005, thousands have depended on Berkey purified water. The Berkey Guy provides the lowest priced filtration systems in every size for incredibly delicious water now and in an emergency. Get to goberkey.com or call 877-886-3653. 877-886-3653. goberkey.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Yes, cliffhanger time on the Paracast. Our guest, Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, was asked a question of one of our listeners who posted at forum.theparacast.com in the question bank. Jeff, your response?
Okay, he asked about the hard problem, and the hard problem is usually couched this way. How is it possible for a physical system like the brain that is made out of atoms and molecules and neurons, none of which are conscious, how does consciousness occur? And there are several potential answers to that question. One of them is that consciousness sort of is very basic, that matter is conscious. Even down to the subatomic particles, they have a measure of consciousness. So that the assumption that physical matter has no consciousness and then somehow it magically appears is a flawed assumption, that the consciousness is already there. Another way to interpret it is that there is what's called dualism, that there's the world of matter, which is not conscious, but that there's another world, a world of spirit. And we're all conscious because we participate in, one might say, the mind of God or the larger consciousness, and that our brains don't generate consciousness, but they act like radio antennas or radio receivers receiving consciousness from this other realm. And then the conventional scientific answer is it's called promissory materialism or promissory materialism, which is someday we'll figure the problem out. We know the brain is the source and generator of consciousness, and just give us enough time and eventually we'll put all the pieces together, and it might have something to do with feedback loops in the brain.
So when a child is born, does that child tap into a specific element of consciousness and that becomes part of its being?
Well, there are different theories. I have to tell you, I don't have a final answer to all of this. I suppose we have to take into account, if you talk about when a child is born, the prospect of reincarnation, that child already has a very long history as a conscious being and may have been in other bodies. The idea of a soul that travels from body to body to body in the course of many lifetimes, sort of akin to the way a snake keeps shedding its skin and forming a new skin. It's a perfectly reasonable hypothesis, and there's quite a bit of evidence to suggest that that's how consciousness works.
For instance, we just recently had an example of a child that was born that was able to, in just an incredible fashion, describe very, very specific details from a past life, which were able to be ascertained to be true. So you're saying that there is enough evidence to at least legitimize some real official scientific or academic study of this instead of having it be just poo-pooed by the mainstream?
Well, at the University of Virginia, the Division of Perceptual Studies, I think it's part of their School of Medicine there, they have been studying reincarnation cases now for many decades. They have a database of over 2,500 cases of young children who, as soon as they can begin to speak, start describing past lifetimes. And in roughly half of those cases, they were able to go back and do the research and document that the descriptions of the children were accurate.
Yeah, wow. Here in the Sedona area, it seems like anybody you meet that's been reincarnated was always either Caesar, Akhenaten, Nefertiti. You rarely get somebody in Sedona that says, I'm a reincarnated stable boy from medieval England or something. It's got to be some exalted. I've actually met two reincarnated Nefertitis.
There was a psychologist named Helen Wambach, now deceased, who wrote a book about past life regression therapy, and she collected all hundreds, maybe thousands of cases of people who under hypnosis remembered past lives, and she correlated the socioeconomic status of the people being described with the demographic statistics that we have from different periods in human cultural history. And she found that contrary to your example there in Sedona, which might be an unusual case, by and large, the descriptions did, in fact, match the actual demographic statistics. Wow. That there were more peasants than there were royalty and so on.
Well, I was kind of being a little bit facetious there. That was kind of dry humor, but I have met two reincarnated Nefertitis. That I will say.
Well, it's also possible that a person might have an inkling that they were part of the retinue or entourage of a well-known person, and in their own memory, they may be confusing it.
Right. Yeah, projecting onto that person that they were a servant to, let's say. Here's another question. This is from Ufology Randall up in Calgary, Alberta, longtime poster here at the forum. In your opinion, it's a two-part question. In your opinion, can consciousness be both fundamental and emergent? And he's wondering why or why not.
Well, what an interesting question. My first thought was, no, it's got to be one or the other. But frankly, I suspect it's far more complex than we conceive of, or maybe even that we can conceive of. And so the idea that both A and not A can exist simultaneously is probably a pretty good way to look at it.
Yeah, it is.
We have to be open to paradoxes.
I'll say, especially dealing with these subject matters. If you're not, you don't have a prayer, I think. His follow-up question is a real good one too. In your opinion, is consciousness a prerequisite for a worldview? And his example is, could an AI without consciousness have a worldview?
Now, isn't that interesting? In theory, it's possible for computers to perform very, very sophisticated tasks. For example, language translation, right, and not be at all conscious. So I suppose one could say, yes, maybe they can even form a worldview. You might say a computer has a worldview, and let's assume for the moment computers are not conscious. There are people who talk about what they call a singularity, which is the day when computers become conscious, because at that point in time, computers will be approximately as complex as the human brain, and then they believe that's when consciousness will emerge in computers. But maybe you don't need to be fully conscious to have a worldview.
Well, yeah, it's a good question. Randall generally comes up with some good ones.
We'll get into more consciousness or lack of consciousness and lots of other stuff with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. Coming up on the show, reminder to please go to plus.theparacast.com to check out our premium subscription plan with Gene and Chris in the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
Looking for that edge during those intimate moments? We see many ads for enhancement, but the side effects include death. At GCN Team, we should change the Healthy Body, Brain, and Heart Pack to the Healthy Libido Pack. The brain and heart are not the only organs that require a healthy vascular system. For proper blood flow at the right moment, go to GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. That's 877-878-4203. That's 877-878-4203.
This is Dan Pilla. Do you owe the IRS money you can't pay? Are tax debts crippling you? I've defended people from the IRS for over 30 years. I've helped thousands, and I can help you too. I wrote the book on IRS settlement, and I'm telling you, There's no such thing as a hopeless case. Call 800-34-NO-TAX to finally get free of IRS debt. With the IRS's new programs, there's never been a better time to solve your problem. Call 800-34-NO-TAX. That's 800-34-NO-TAX, or my website, danpilla.com.
Hi, Peter Vaccaro for ParanormalDate.com. Are you looking for love in all the wrong places? Now you have a chance to change that by signing up for free at ParanormalDate.com. This incredible dating site puts people of like minds together. People who are interested in the strange, the unusual, mysteries, ghosts, UFOs, and the afterlife, and so much more. ParanormalDate.com was developed for you, people seeking a viable alternative to the other dating services. You can join for free by going to ParanormalDate.com, and if you decide you like it and want to connect with people, use the code GEORGE for a substantial discount. Mark Rawlings, president of ParanormalDate.com, says so many people hunger to share their experiences about the paranormal, the unexplainable, or the afterlife, and so much more, and this is the source for them to meet and share that common interest. So sign up for free at ParanormalDate.com, ParanormalDate.com, and use the code GEORGE if you decide to connect with someone you like.
Are you worried about your mom or dad living alone in their house? Hi, I'm Joan London. Listen, I know how difficult it is to find senior care for someone you love. That's why I recommend a free service called A Place for Mom. They are the nation's largest senior living referral service. Call A Place for Mom today.
To receive free information on senior living communities in your area, call A Place for Mom at 1-800-704-6182.
A Place for Mom offers free one-on-one advice from local advisors and a personalized list of senior living communities you can visit. If you have questions about senior care for your mom or dad, there's a place for answers, A Place for Mom.
Call A Place for Mom in the next 10 minutes to get your free ebook on financing senior care, as well as free information on senior living communities in your area. Call 1-800-704-6182. That's 1-800-704-6182.
Will the government protect your family from Iran and North Korea's newest weapon, EMP? We buy guns to protect ourselves, home, health, and car insurance for accidents. Maybe you also have food storage. But how would you keep your refrigerator running in a long-term EMP blackout? Using tested military designs, the Solarc EMP-hardened solar generator protects and powers your critical appliances for years without burying items underground or wrapping them in aluminum foil. Unlike other preps, Solarc is used every day to help offset your electric bill automatically. Visit PortableSolarLLC.com to learn how easily expandable the system is. Solarc is the most affordable and powerful solution on the market. The whole system even fits in the back of a pickup or SUV and can install in less than an hour. See for yourself why Solarc beats other off-grid systems at PortableSolarLLC.com. Don't wait for the government. Go to PortableSolarLLC.com to learn why Solarc is energy insurance for your family.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
Yes, Chris is trying to whisper, and that whisper was in the 19th dimension. Okay, that's with the character from the comics that you have to say his name backwards to get rid of him. Seriously speaking here, talking about consciousness, Jeff, I guess we go into life and death. All right?
Okay.
Right. So when a person dies, does that mean their consciousness is freed from being tethered to this particular physical being and then it goes elsewhere, or what?
Well, there are different perspectives on life after death. There's some very, very sophisticated and detailed and complex descriptions that go back 150 years to the work of Allan Kardec, a French researcher who began interviewing mediums and transcribing what they had to say and looking at when different mediums, spiritualist mediums, would agree with each other or not. And these teachings often are in accord with similar teachings from yoga philosophy and Tibetan Buddhism, where they describe different realms in the afterlife. Some realms are very close to the earth plane, and living there might be almost identical to living on earth. Other realms are such that you no longer need even an astral body. You become a pure energy being or a pure being of light and travel into realms that are unintelligible or almost unimaginable from our human perspective.
Now, the point raised here is when a person dies, are they aware they're going anywhere, or do they just wake up and they are accustomed to the new state of affairs, whatever it is?
Well, I think it depends a lot on the individual. You may recall when George Harrison died, the Beatle, the famous Beatle, he died, as I recall, almost 20 years ago now. And at that time, it was his goal to die consciously. He tried very hard to be conscious at the moment of his death so that he could experience the whole thing sort of wide awake. That's a goal of many people who are involved in yoga practices and meditation, for example. But the average person, we're going to die in many different ways. Sometimes it's an accidental death and it's very sudden and we're unprepared for it. And there are accounts of people who don't know that they're dead when that happens. They find themselves in a very strange place. And oftentimes they need to be guided to move on to some sort of sense of spiritual evolution. There are other people, according to the folklore, who when they die, they still have very strong attachments and habits, even addictions to alcohol, tobacco, nicotine, and sex, for example. So they hang around the earth plane trying to maybe possess other people so that they can experience the pleasures that they were used to when they had a body.
Well, that's a great way to dovetail into a whole new series of conversations here, and that is the whole idea of ghosts and haunted sites. We're seeing a tremendous upswing in the last few years of interest in this subject with all the many ridiculous, actually, in my interpretation, or my opinion, ghost shows and ghost hunting shows. But what about haunted sites? What about reoccurring, the spectral images that people report? What do we know about that? And is there any way to explain how this is possible other than the explanation that you just gave? How can they be manifest at one moment and then gone the next? Is it purely on the receiving end? Is it people that are in the right place at the right time to experience this, or are we dealing with something that's operating totally autonomously on its own schedule?
Well, the Society for Psychical Research that was founded in 1882 in London began to explore these experiences of ghosts and apparitions and hauntings. They had very rigorous methodologies, and one of the early publications in this area was called Apparitions of the Living, in which they pointed out that there are many, many cases where people experience ghost-like apparitions, but they're not of people who are deceased. They're of people who are alive, and very often those people were attempting to project their consciousness to another location. They might have been asleep having a dream about being in another location, and people saw their apparition, or they may have been attempting to do it consciously, particularly people engaged in yoga practice seem to be able to cultivate that ability. So there's a large lore about these apparitions. Sometimes they're seen by multiple people at the same time. Sometimes they're seen by one person in a room and not by other people who are in the same room. So it like so much in the field of parapsychology, there are many paradoxes and controversies, but I would say one thing that's been established unequivocally is that apparitions of the living do indeed occur.
Well, that's interesting. I've never really even thought about that. I didn't even know there was a kind of an area of parapsychology that studied that. That's news to me. That's very interesting. Having been to some of the most haunted sites in North America, dragged along kicking and screaming in the beginning, I might add. I went into it very skeptical and thought it was actually kind of dumb. And, I couldn't believe the owner of the video company I was working for was into that sort of thing. And having visited some very, as I come to find out, very, having been to some of the more notorious haunted sites in North America, I did walk away from those experiences with a newfound respect for the subject. An example would be the Manteno State Asylum, which is where it was the first of the super hospitals where we developed Thorazine, first did lobotomies, electroshock therapy, hydrotherapy techniques, I think were introduced from that facility. I have never felt, only one other time have I felt the level of unease in that particular facility. It was almost like condensed ghost soup. They had demolished 1,100 and some odd buildings, and only a number of them were left. And it really did feel like all the hangers-on spirit entities were all compressed into one space. It was very, very disconcerting. Are there any haunted sites that you're aware of that you feel have real legitimate evidence to support claims of hauntings?
Well, one of the areas that's particularly interesting to parapsychologists and psychical researchers are poltergeist cases, which are quite similar to hauntings. Typically, they say a poltergeist follows an individual around, whereas a haunting is located to a particular place, a particular building, for example, but they overlap quite a bit. And parapsychologists often like to be on the scene to observe the strange, what's called recurring spontaneous psychokinetic activities associated with poltergeists and hauntings when they can. And there's probably in the literature well over 100 well-documented cases of unusual phenomenon being observed at these sites.
Yeah. Did you have any particular favorites?
Well, for example, I think they're coming out with a new movie about what's called the Enfield poltergeist. It got a lot of attention about 20, 30 years ago in England.
Yeah. Let's pursue that particular poltergeist phenomenon in our next segment, okay? We have Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove with Gene, who has no doctorates or degrees. And Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
We also have swag. We have all these exclusive Paracast things that you can buy. We've got 60 or so different items, and entails t-shirts, sleeves for notebook computers, iPad cases, mouse pads, the Paracast jumbo tote bag, all sorts of t-shirts and jackets and stuff like that for men and women. We have a Paracast aluminum water bottle. All this stuff, you go to store.theparacast.com, store.theparacast.com. What makes it special is that the items are the best quality, great t-shirts, fabrics, and they have our official logo on them. That's what makes them special, in multiple sizes and colors. We even have stuff for children, stuff for women, stuff for men. We have all sorts of sizes, like small up to X large. A lot of good stuff. That's the swag from the Paracast. You go to store.theparacast.com, stop by, and take a shopping tour.
By now you know that wireless technology like cell phones do in fact pose dangers to the health and privacy of everyone. Block-It Pocket's wide range of products are unmatched in providing the protection you deserve. No scare tactics, just common sense. BlockItPocket.com offers quality American-made options to alleviate and eliminate these invisible dangers. Learn more at BlockItPocket.com or call 888-315-9618. BlockItPocket.com, enhancing health and privacy.
Are the answers to your present and future hidden in your past? Akashic readings help you learn to unlock the answers for love, finances, weight loss, self-esteem, confusion, grief and loss, and more. Akashic email readings by Dr. Kelly Maroon, Ph.D. are specially priced right now. Learn more at Dr. Kelly Maroon's website, akashicuniversal.com, spelled A-K-A-S-H-I-C universal.com. Change your life today. Become one with your true path with intention on purpose. Visit akashicuniversal.com.
Has neck, back, or shoulder pain got you down? Go to sunshine-pillows.com and get soothing comfort, support, and pain relief fast. Their microwavable heat therapy pillows and wraps treat neck and shoulder pain, reduce stress, and relax the soul. An ergonomic pillow from Sunshine Pillows supports your head and neck on long trips or when simply resting at home. Be good to yourself. Visit sunshine-pillows.com. sunshine-pillows.com.
This is a healthcare alert from the Pain Relief Hotline. If you, a family member, or a loved one suffers from knee, back, shoulder, or ankle pain and have Medicare as your primary insurance, we've got great news. You don't have to suffer any longer. You can immediately qualify for a pain-relieving brace at little or no cost to you by calling our 24/7 Pain Relief Hotline at 866-389-0620. Delivery is free and all paperwork is handled for you. If you are on Medicare and have knee, back, shoulder, or ankle pain, don't wait. You can qualify to immediately receive a pain-relieving brace at little or no cost by calling our 24/7 Pain Hotline now at 866-389-0620. Our representatives are standing by 24/7 to take your call and rush you your pain-relieving brace at little or no cost to you. Shipping is free and all paperwork is handled for you. Just call 866-389-0620. That's 866-389-0620. Again, 866-389-0620.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson Adam Pulaski of the Pulaski Law Firm with principal office in Houston, Texas is the attorney responsible for the content of this ad. This ad is not legal advice, and the choice of a lawyer should not be based solely upon advertisement. Services may not be available in all states. Attention Xarelto users. If you or a loved one took Xarelto and suffered a serious bleeding event, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Xarelto is a popular prescription blood thinner used to prevent blood clots and protect patients from strokes. These serious bleeding events have led to numerous cases of hospitalization and even death. Phone lines are open 24/7. Call 800-261-0937. That's 800-261-0937.
Hi, this is Bryce Abel. I'm the producer of Dark Skies, the co-author of AD After Disclosure, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Okay, so you're talking about a specific poltergeist episode or series of episodes, Jeff. Would you explain?
Well, the Enfield poltergeist is one of the most dramatic on record. It was researched extensively by my friend Guy Lyon Playfair in England, who has written about it. The case went on for several years, and it included, in the course of the investigation, a wide range of paranormal phenomenon, including people being thrown around the room, objects being levitated, objects materializing and dematerializing, voices appearing out of nowhere in the middle of the room. The family who was living in this house was I guess they felt practically tortured by these phenomenon, and as I say, they were ongoing for years before they eventually subsided, and researchers were on the scene almost continually.
Of course, Hollywood is going to have their way with that particular.
Yeah, when it gets time to be made into a movie, the people from Hollywood are interested in one thing, which is maximizing their ticket sales. So they're not trying to tell the story the way a researcher would attempt to tell it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
They're trying to tell it in a way that the people will come in and pay for tickets.
That's the business that they're in, yeah.
Yeah, it's called the entertainment complex.
Yeah.
Well, we do have quite a bit of interest, obviously, on the show in the subject of ufology and UFOs, or UAPs, I think is the now term du jour. unexplained aerial phenomenon, or Ray Stanford's term, anomalous aerial objects, AAO. Before we get into that subject, I've always been taken by the fact that you included Ray and his twin brother Rex in your book, Roots of Consciousness. It's where I first really found out about Ray and his brother. And since then, Ray has become a very good friend of mine. In fact, I've written a biography about his ufological life. What do you think of people like a Ray Stanford, who has what appear to be special abilities? And he's an identical twin, and his identical twin doesn't appear to have those abilities, yet is so intrigued, I think, by his brother's abilities that he goes on and has a fascination for parapsychology. Did you get a chance to meet Ray back then, or have you kept in touch with him over the years?
In fact, back in 1973, I sponsored a conference on parapsychology at Berkeley, in which both Ray and Rex Stanford attended and were speakers at the time. But I haven't kept up with them since that time. It's been a long, long time since I've had any contact with either of these two. Yeah. Subsequently, I wrote a book myself called The PK Man, about an individual who had unusual psychokinetic abilities and believed that those abilities occurred by virtue of a connection he had with alien entities he called the space intelligences.
Oh, give us the kind of a thumbnail sketch. Who is this person? What were some of the...
Yeah, his name is Ted Owens, and for people who view my video series at newthinkingaloud.com, that's spelled ALLOWED, I've done about 5 or 6 interviews about the case of the PK Man. It's quite elaborate. I studied him for over a decade, and amongst many other demonstrations of psychokinetic abilities or his connection with alien entities, he produced UFO sightings, and he did that for me. I asked him because I saw in the files that there were many such cases, and I tried to set up a controlled experiment where he was going to produce some dramatic UFO sightings in the San Francisco area. We used the San Diego area, a comparable metropolitan area, as a control group to see if are these occurring anyway all the time, everywhere. We got very dramatic sightings in San Francisco. At one point, Ted Owens called me up and he said, "It's going to happen. I can feel it. It's going to be in a couple of days. There's going to be a UFO. It will be seen by hundreds of people. It will be photographed, and the photograph will be published on the front page of one of your local newspapers." Well, that's exactly what happened 3 days later. And not only was it photographed, it was videotaped. And the videotape was shown on Channel 9 Evening News in San Francisco. I still have the videotape. And furthermore, it was seen not only by hundreds of people on the ground who were outdoors looking at an exhibit of aerial artwork over the campus of the Sonoma State University, about 50 miles from San Francisco. The whole art
They had a party crasher.
was out there, but there was a pilot in the air, an artist named Stephen Pileski, who had an airplane 3,000 feet above the campus with smoke shooting out the back, and this unidentified flying object just was right there in his airspace, hovering around him, lozenge-shaped, about 30 feet across. So it was seen simultaneously from the air and the ground, photographed and videotaped, probably one of the best attested UFO sightings in history, and the whole thing had been very explicitly predicted for me by Ted Owens, the PK Man. Not only predicted, he claimed he caused it.
You know, it's very interesting when you mention Ted Owens, because my only remembrance of that name is someone who was really, really considered controversial, but I looked up his history. And one of the early people who wrote about him was Otto Binder, the comic book writer, science fiction writer, and UFO writer, if you remember
correct.
him.
What was the time frame? What was this time period, this 10-year time period?
I researched Ted Owens starting in 1976 until his death in 1987.
Wow. So where do you come down on the whole UFO question? Number one, it sounds like you have a sense that this is a real phenomenon. What are your theories, or what do you think is operative here? Are we dealing with actual interstellar traveling beings from other star systems? Are we dealing with some sort of manifestation, collective manifestation, let's say, on the part of humans, or are we dealing with other tenets on?
Well, it might be multiple phenomena for all we know. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm very partial to the theories of Jacques Vallée, who suggests that there are entities. They may be entities in different realms of consciousness or realms of hyperspace. It may not be that they actually come from other planets, but it seems they've been around for a long time and have been attempting to manipulate the human species in different ways by operating at an almost subconscious level. Ted Owens, who had enormous abilities and did 168 demonstrations in my files, claimed that he was the first person they found who had this level of power since Moses. So he's suggesting that, the same entities responsible for the 10 plagues in Egypt some 3,000 years ago were the ones that are working with him.
Wow. That's a pretty exalted company to place yourself in.
Well, you might say so. People who are conventionally religious think of Moses as a spiritual hero, but if you read the Bible literally, there are descriptions of Moses and the various miracles attributed to him and some of the other actions that he engaged in, including killing thousands of people for the great sin of worshiping the golden calf, that make him much less than a spiritual hero to me. But maybe we're getting a bit off topic here.
Well, that's all right. He was probably the head of a rival cattle cult sect, as his brother Aaron was, which is one of my theories. Of course, King James made sure that all references to bull and cow worship were excised from the Bible in the early 1600s. But again, we do digress. An interesting theory that I've always felt had some real resonance attached to it, of course, was James Lovelock's Gaian theory, the theory of Gaia, which has now, I think, been kind of spiffed up, and they now call it Earth System Science.
Let's talk about Earth Systems Science, or whatever you want to call it. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
There is an affordable alternative to the high cost of healthcare that offers freedom from insurance while providing compliance with the Obamacare individual mandate. Imagine having access to quality, affordable healthcare that allows you the freedom to choose your doctor and hospital. Members can share up to 100% of necessary medical expenses, including some alternative treatments. Find out how you and your family can contain healthcare costs without giving up your freedom. Go to libertyoncall.org. That's libertyoncall.org.
Diabetes is at war with your circulatory system. Fight back with Cultivate. Cultivate is a dietary supplement containing powerful herbs for circulation and healthy cardiac function. Improve your energy, stamina, and mental acuity. Reduce swelling, cold hands, and risk of amputation. Get your blood flowing with Cultivate. This 5-star rated product was developed by a diabetic pharmacist and is available online at www.getbloodflowing.com. That's www.getbloodflowing.com.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Earth Systems Science? Doesn't sound so sexy anymore.
It's formerly known as Gaian theory. Of course, when Lovelock came out with the Gaian hypothesis, he was tarred and feathered by the scientific and academic communities, the mainstream. There is, I think, something very tangible behind the idea that the Earth is a superorganism that has some sort of form of sentience. Where do you come down on that whole idea of we're merely seed pods on a superorganism and we're being tricked to get off planet before we destroy the ecosystem for the next 1,000 years? And maybe Gaia is trying to get us out there to spread the gene pool out to the stars. I'm kind of extrapolating on Lovelock's theory here a little bit, but do you think that there's something to that? I mean, have you really studied?
I think there very well might be something to it. If you take the view of panpsychism, a philosophical view toward that I described earlier, which basically suggests that even subatomic particles have a measure of consciousness, then why wouldn't a planet also have a measure of consciousness? I think it's quite likely. I'll tell you, though, what intrigues me about the Gaia hypothesis is the actual mythology of Gaia herself. I did an interview recently for my new Thinking Aloud series with a scholar of ancient mythology who pointed out that in ancient times there were multiple instances in which the mother goddess, of which Gaia is one of the oldest, collaborated with her own children to overthrow the ruling sky god. So Uranus was overthrown by Kronos, and Kronos was overthrown by Zeus, and it seems as if there were efforts to overthrow Zeus as well, that the Eleusinian mysteries may have actually been an effort to do that. So you've got a kind of a tension built in between the idea of the earth goddess, which represents a sense of ecology, a sense of we are all connected, we are all one, as opposed to the sky god with his sense of, I'm in charge and you better do what I say. Also, sky gods have a history of abusing their children and being afraid that their children may wish to overthrow them, which in fact they do. It seems that a lot of dynamics associated with human history are embodied in these myths, so that the revival of the Gaia myth by Lovelock, there's more depth to it than one might see at first. It almost suggests a necessity to overthrow the dominant idea of a masculine god up in the sky.
Well, then that kind of calls in the trickster as possibly a mechanism to actually do that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an archetype that I'm particularly fond of, having tried to redefine the trickster in a book.
Well, the trickster archetype is also associated with the god Hermes and Mercury, who were the initiators into the spiritual, psychic, and mystical mysteries of the universe.
Yeah, and they also inhabited the sky and the earth, the firmament.
Yeah.
They were messengers back and forth.
going back and forth. And so there's, the whole Western esoteric tradition. It's sometimes called the Hermetic tradition because it goes back to this trickster god, Hermes.
Right. Well, I have a theory that the trickster, by literal definition, by traditional definition, is neither self-aware and as a result lacks an agenda, and is amoral. It's not positive or negative. It's like a little 3-year-old kid banging his sister on the head with a bat, having so much fun, not realizing that he could kill her. I have a feeling that the trickster's role of inadvertently supplying humans with technology or changing nature for the betterment or benefit of man.
Benefit of man. Go ahead.
I have a theory that the trickster is now being supplied technology by humans and could possibly be reemerging as self-aware with a possible agenda within the internet. And
I would like to encourage you to invite on your program one of my guests, Jason Giorgiani, who is a philosopher. He teaches at the Newark or the New Jersey Institute of Technology in Newark, New Jersey, and he is the author of a book called Prometheus and Atlas, in which he deals at great length with the trickster archetype and how it relates to my work with the PK man and to UFO phenomenon in general and to the whole history of Western culture.
Well, excellent. We're going to have to make a note of that, Gene. We're always on the lookout for guests that aren't your standard ufological fare. They're few and far between and hard to find, invariably. Thank you for the recommendation. We will definitely follow up on that. Well, getting back to the whole idea of Gaia, do you think Gaia could be conscious enough or have an agenda and could be possibly manifesting many of what we are calling paranormal, phenomenal events? Do you think there's a possibility that there's some sort of possible Gaian imperative being enacted?
I haven't given the matter much thought, but I have to say, yes, I think that it's a possibility. If one assumes that Gaia is an active, conscious presence, then one also has to take into account the possibility of other archetypal entities and the conflicts that may arise amongst them. So the whole picture could be exceedingly complex, and I think it's one of the reasons why most materialistic scientists think they better stay away from this altogether, because if you start to take any of these hypotheses seriously, it'll drive you crazy.
Well, that's unfortunate, but there are some of us who are brave enough and intrepid enough to start digging around in places that some people just don't want to go.
Yeah.
And that's what we do at the Paracast. We dig around,
and we sometimes get in a little trouble for it. But what the heck?
Well, I find that the more you dig, the more dirt you uncover. So that's kind of one of my axioms. We love to dig here. So you're talking about your New Thinking channel. Why don't you give us a little bit more information about that and give us maybe a rundown of some of the people that you're featuring and some of the areas that people can expect to find there in terms of areas of concentration and research.
Well, let me just say, and thank you for asking. I'm happy to talk about it. It's my passion right now. As I mentioned earlier in the program, 36 years ago, I received a doctoral diploma in parapsychology, and to this date, it's the only one ever awarded in the world by an accredited American university. But I'm optimistic enough to think that eventually there will be academic programs in parapsychology in many colleges and universities. And so my goal in creating the new Thinking Aloud video channel is to leave a legacy for future generations so that they know, what the best minds, the best researchers in the field have had to say about it now, because there's some great researchers around, and many of them are getting older. I'm 69 myself, and many of my own teachers are in their 70s and 80s. So I'm trying to give them an opportunity to do series of career retrospective interviews in which they can talk about, what they've learned over the last 50, 60 years as researchers in this field. And of course, also some young ones like Jason Georgiani, who I mentioned earlier, got his doctoral degree only 2 or 3 years ago and is doing incredibly brilliant work now. So that's my goal. I'm there to leave a legacy. And we have basically 2 websites, New Thinking Allowed, spelled ALLOWED.com.
And let's do the second one in our next segment, okay, Jeff?
Okay, yeah.
Right, so we got one site there, which we'll repeat, then get ready to write down the other one. Get your pencils, iPads, or whatever ready. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
The award-winning graphic converter, the universal genius for photo editing on your Mac. Join over 1.5 million loyal users for this Swiss Army knife photo editing app. It gives you all you expect from a top-flight image editing app with tons of features, and most important, it's easy to use. Get 20% off from lemkesoft.de/Gene. That's lemkesoft.de/Gene. As you know, neighbors, web hosting can be pretty cheap, but not all hosting is the same. DreamHost wins Best of Awards year after year. You get unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, and even the low-cost plans put your sites on high-performance SSDs. Want to know more about what DreamHost has to offer? Go to technightowl.com/host. Once again, that's technightowl.com/host.
Will the government protect your family from Iran and North Korea's newest weapon, EMP? We buy guns to protect ourselves, home, health, and car insurance for accidents. Maybe you also have food storage. But how would you keep your refrigerator running in a long-term EMP blackout? Using tested military designs, the Solarc EMP-hardened solar generator protects and powers your critical appliances for years without burying items underground or wrapping them in aluminum foil. Unlike other preps, Solarc is used every day to help offset your electric bill automatically. Visit PortableSolarLLC.com to learn how easily expandable the system is. Solarc is the most affordable and powerful solution on the market. The whole system even fits in the back of a pickup or SUV and can install in less than an hour. See for yourself why Solarc beats other off-grid systems at PortableSolarLLC.com. Don't wait for the government. Go to PortableSolarLLC.com to learn why Solarc is energy insurance for your family.
How confident are you in your food storage? If it was all you had to rely on, would it sustain your family? Hard times, good times, or any time, NuManna Storable Food is the proven superior choice. Learn for yourself what happened when one man ate only NuManna Storable Food for an entire month. Online at PowerPrepper.com. That's PowerPrepper.com. Experience the NuManna difference.
American-made food stores I love to eat. Yum!
Dangerous blood clot device alert. If you or a loved one had an IVC filter placed to prevent blood clots from traveling to your heart or lungs and suffered an injury, you may be entitled to substantial financial compensation. The FDA warns that IVC filters may cause serious complications, such as heart or lung damage, internal bleeding, and even death. These dangerous blood clot devices can break, and the metal fragments can travel to your heart or lungs, causing serious injuries. If you or a loved one suffered organ damage or other injuries from an IVC filter, you may be entitled to substantial financial compensation. Act now. Time is limited to file a claim. For a free consultation and free information, call Injury Help Desk at 800-478-1507. 800-478-1507. 800-478-1507. This is an advertisement. Paid non-attorney spokesperson. InjuryHelpDesk.com is responsible for this advertisement. Principal office, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Diabetes is at war with your circulatory system. Fight back with Cultivate. Cultivate is a dietary supplement containing powerful herbs for circulation and healthy cardiac function. Improve your energy, stamina, and mental acuity. Reduce swelling, cold hands, and risk of amputation. Get your blood flowing with Cultivate. This 5-star rated product was developed by a diabetic pharmacist and is available online at www.getbloodflowing.com. That's www.getbloodflowing.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
So we have those two sites from Jeff. Mention the first one again, then tell us about the second.
Yeah, newthinkingallowed.com, and it's all one word, New Thinking Allowed, ALLOWED. It's kind of a play on words. And newthinkingallowed.org is the New Thinking Allowed Foundation, which is raising money for the ongoing production of the video series. And there are many, many interesting things available on the foundation website, so including books and other items available from the TV series. And to date, in the last 15 months, I've actually uploaded 180 plus interviews onto the website. They haven't all been released to the public yet, but they will be between now and the end of the year. I think about 150 of them are now public, and we're still actively engaged in productions. Next month, I have Charlie Tart coming to Las Vegas to be interviewed, who was one of my professors at Berkeley.
Wow. I think wasn't he one of the people that started transpersonal psychology, if I'm not mistaken? Or?
Yes, he wrote the book Transpersonal Psychologies, and he also popularized the term altered states of consciousness. He wrote that book. He's sort of a cult hero. He was even mentioned in the movie Altered States as being one of the few researchers around doing good work in the field.
Yeah, true. You have rubbed shoulders with others in the field. John Lilly, I'm sure, would be one of them. Terence McKenna, probably. He probably
done many interviews with Terence McKenna. As I mentioned, I started my career in this field by being a radio interviewer in 1972. Right. And in the course of all of those decades, I've done well over 1,000 interviews with many of the thought leaders in the field, many of whom are no longer with us.
Yeah. Let me ask you kind of a crazy question here, but we ask crazy questions. So we've talked to these other people you've worked with on a factual basis, and I should point out, in all fairness, that when Ted Owens was alive, and he had a couple of books published by Gray Barker's Saussurian back in the early days, that some people really dismissed him, didn't take him seriously. But over the long haul, over the years, have you run into many people who made claims of being some kind of psychic or to have some really important knowledge about the paranormal that turned out not to really have any of that stuff?
Well, most people, to be honest, who make claims like that aren't able to back them up the way Ted Owens was. He sought out scientists and did demonstration after demonstration after demonstration, trying to convince them that he was the real thing. But most people who make such claims don't do that. Ted Owens was very unusual in that regard. And the tragedy is that in spite of all of his efforts to work with scientists, he was generally met with ridicule. And furthermore, it got under his skin. So when people laughed at him for making the claims that he made, he often said, I better teach these people a lesson. So he would lash out at many people using his psychokinetic abilities, and the results were not always pleasant. There were lives lost. There were accidents and crashes and very unfortunate things that sometimes happen to people. In fact, on one occasion, he got angry with me. I mentioned the wonderful UFO sighting that he produced, but he promised he was going to produce 3 of them. Some days afterwards, we were on the phone, and he was bragging about what a great sighting he produced. And I said, well, you haven't done everything you said you were going to do yet. And he slammed the phone down. He was so angry, and I began to feel sick. All of a sudden, I began to get a scratchy feeling in my throat, the kind you get when you know, this is going to be bad. I'm going to be getting a real sore throat here. Then, 45 minutes later, he called back. Without explaining himself in any way, he simply said, Jeffrey, I apologize. I will never do that to you again. And within moments, my sore throat cleared up.
Oh, boy. So this person can make you sick.
Well, I think we need to appreciate that we live in a world where we don't know who has these abilities and who doesn't. You know, the lesson for me is honestly to always treat every other person with respect, that there's never a good reason to treat any other human being with contempt. And it's often risky because you don't know if the person that you're treating with contempt might have psychokinetic abilities and might try to lash out at you that way.
So you're saying basically that if I don't like somebody, they rip me off, and I have these abilities, and I am not aware that I have any abilities. But assuming I did, I could will them to become sick or something?
Yes, that's precisely what I'm saying. That's one of the reasons there's so much resistance to parapsychology, is because of those sorts of implications. We live in a world where here in the United States of America, less than 300 years ago, we were burning witches at the stake. And people think that was a dark, superstitious age. Well, maybe it was, but we have to confront the evidence, and the evidence to me is that this type of psychokinetic attack is quite possible.
I could tell you stories.
There's something about a primitive animistic worldview that makes more sense than the modern materialistic worldview. Today we believe that witchcraft doesn't really exist, and it may well be that we've got it wrong.
Yeah, well, from personal experiences, that what you've described is very real. Having personally experienced one close call that I was inches away from being killed after breaking up with a very, very powerful Wiccan practitioner and someone trained in advanced degrees of the Western esoteric tradition. And her and her friend got together, and I think they were doing some hanky-panky, and I almost I came within inches of having the closest call I ever had while driving on the road. I had a person come blazing down a mountain road at night in my lane, and I literally had to leave the road to not be killed. And I do equate that. I equate that with what was going on in my house by 2 very powerful practitioners of the dark arts, shall we say.
Ooh, practitioners of the dark arts. You can tell us a lot more about that.
Not really. It was a 4-year relationship with a Salem-trained Wiccan practitioner, and we both went through some pretty sophisticated hermetic training. I'll leave it at that.
I'm not going to say there are any psychic aspects to this, maybe psycho, but over the last portion of this episode of the Paracast, Chris has had some awful problems dealing with his Skype connection. So every so often his voice gets distorted. Sometimes what he says completely disappears. I know many of you have encountered problems like that with Skype, and I'm not going to say it's the result of the fact that Skype is a Microsoft product. Just bear with us. We're doing the best we can to get the best possible audio we can. With Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, with Gene and Chris, you're in the Paracast.
You are listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson Adam Pulaski of the Pulaski Law Firm with principal office in Houston, Texas is the attorney responsible for the content of this ad. This ad is not legal advice, and the choice of a lawyer should not be based solely upon advertisement. Services may not be available in all states. Attention Xarelto users. If you or a loved one took Xarelto and suffered a serious bleeding event, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Xarelto is a popular prescription blood thinner used to prevent blood clots and protect patients from strokes. These serious bleeding events have led to numerous cases of hospitalization and even death. Phone lines are open 24/7. Call 800-261-0937. That's 800-261-0937.
Why be held hostage by your wireless carrier for 2 years? What if you had no contract, no activation fees, no hidden costs, tracking, tracing, harvesting customer data, or draconian gimmicks? All on America's largest 4G LTE, GSM, and Sprint networks. Introducing Pix Wireless. Activate your Sprint, AT&T, or unlock GSM phones with Pix and choose from an arsenal of monthly plans or build your own. Starting at only $2.99 per month. Get connected now. Call or click 1-866-205-9513 or PixWireless.com, spelled PIXWireless.com. Pick Pix and get connected today.
Hi, Peter Vaccaro for ParanormalDate.com. Are you looking for love in all the wrong places? Now you have a chance to change that by signing up for free at ParanormalDate.com. This incredible dating site puts people of like minds together. People who are interested in the strange, the unusual, mysteries, ghosts, UFOs, and the afterlife, and so much more. ParanormalDate.com was developed for you, people seeking a viable alternative to the other dating services. You can join for free by going to ParanormalDate.com, and if you decide you like it and want to connect with people, use the code GEORGE for a substantial discount. Mark Rawlings, president of ParanormalDate.com, says so many people hunger to share their experiences about the paranormal, the unexplainable, or the afterlife, and so much more, and this is the source for them to meet and share that common interest. So sign up for free at ParanormalDate.com, ParanormalDate.com, and use the code GEORGE if you decide to connect with someone you like.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and like all of you out there, I had problems sleeping. Pillows would go flat, I would flip-flop all night long, I would wake up with a sore neck, maybe a headache, or feel like I needed a nap even though I slept 8 hours. When I invented MyPillow, I wanted it to where you could move the patented fill to give you the exact support you need as an individual, regardless of sleep position. MyPillow will get you into that deep REM sleep faster, and you will stay there longer. It's not about how much time we spend in bed, it's about how much of that quality sleep we get. I do all of my own manufacturing right here in the United States. I have a 10-year warranty. You can wash and dry my pillow, and I give you a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. And here's my best offer ever. You can buy one of my pillows and get one absolutely free.
Go to MyPillow.com or call 800-870-0305 and use promo code GCN. That's MyPillow.com or 800-870-0305 with promo code GCN.
Warning, if you've recently declared bankruptcy, you're going to want to change the station because there's an alternative to bankruptcy and it could be faster than you'd ever think possible. But if you've already declared bankruptcy and have missed this opportunity, you'll want to change the station now. Here it is. Right now, the company that has resolved more credit card debt than anyone in the U.S. may be able to settle your debt too. You could reduce your debt with one low monthly program payment. If you call right now and qualify, Freedom Debt Relief will show you how low your monthly program payment could be for free. Call now, 1-800-557-3965. That's 1-800-557-3965. If you're struggling with debt, this could be your answer. And the bigger your debt, the more money you could save. To find out for free how much of your hard-earned money Freedom Debt Relief could help you save, call now, 1-800-557-3965. 1-800-557-3965. 1-800-557-3965.
Hi, this is Bryce Abel. I'm the producer of Dark Skies, the co-author of AD After Disclosure, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
We're back with Jeff on the Paracast. Let me ask you a question here, which kind of focuses on everything. Obviously, you'd like to see more and more people study parapsychology. What about ufology, something like that?
I think they're related fields, parapsychology, ufology. There are a whole number of areas of the paranormal, and I think they all touch upon each other. One might say that parapsychologists have developed more sophisticated experimental methodologies and field study methodologies, but UFO researchers also have good field study methodologies. They're somewhat different, and often you find that the UFO researchers and the parapsychologists don't like to talk to each other because they're afraid they'll be stigmatized. It's hard enough to be working in one area of the paranormal. As soon as you start to work in two, you're sort of doubling the stigma that you're going to have to face with your colleagues, especially if you're in an academic institution.
Now, you put UFOs and parapsychology in the same field, but you know, of course, that there are a lot of people out there who say, okay, UFOs is physical visitations from other planets. It's just spaceships. Whereas with parapsychology, we get into a whole host of things. Do we think then that there's a very deep consciousness factor in what we experience or perceive about UFOs?
Well, even if you assume that UFOs are spaceships from other star systems, which is one hypothesis among many, you get accounts of telepathic communication supposedly occurring between the occupants of these spaceships and humans. So there's a parapsychological element there. There's no getting around it one way or another.
Now, that's a very interesting thing here, because one of the complaints I often make about UFO investigation is the fact that when investigators come in and look at a sighting, they'll get the details, you know, the azimuth, the size of the object, what it looked like. They'll get all sorts of information about what you saw, but not who you are.
Yeah, it all needs to be taken into account. And there are many examples in the literature of people with highly developed psychic abilities who have UFO contact. Certainly the Ted Owens case is one, but so is the Uri Geller case. And there are others. There's Dr. Berthold Schwartz, a psychiatrist, published a lengthy study with one of his patients who had the ability to photograph UFOs, and it seems as if those photographs were actually the product of what we call thoughtography, or psychokinetic projections from her own mind.
Now, Dr. Schwartz, I knew him slightly, very slightly, and was in touch with him, I guess, you know, in the final years of his life and everything.
Yeah, he was a fine researcher and a good man.
The case of the woman in Vancouver, British Columbia, that had all those movies and photographs?
No, this is a different case. This is a case on the East Coast, and the woman involved was named Stella Lansing, and she often produced photographic images of UFOs in a clock-like formation, like a dozen different UFOs all lined up as if they were the markers on a clock, marking the hours. Nobody could see them, but she'd just point her camera, and then when they developed the pictures, there they were.
Let me continue. Okay, so let's talk about things like physical evidence of UFOs. So photographs, we do see photographs from time to time. Most, however, could be faked, and nowadays with the technology, all can be faked. So when it comes to physical evidence, what do we do?
Yeah, I think the field has a long way to go. I know that the physical evidence is not limited just to photographs. There are also a wide variety of other specimens that have been, including metal alloys that have been found, unusual metallic alloys that would be hard to identify normally here on Earth. But for the most part, you know, you just have to keep accumulating evidence. You've got to realize that in spite of the enormous popular interest, there are only maybe several dozen really serious researchers working in the field. And in such a small field as ufology or parapsychology is an equally small field, while there are many amateurs, you're not going to get the kind of progress you'd like to see if you only have a few dozen professional people working in the field. I suspect at some point in the future we'll have thousands of people like other scientific areas have, and we're likely to see more progress then.
How do you persuade so-called conventional science to take any of this seriously? Because very, very few scientists, as you know, do.
Well, I think you have to just be persistent, and you have to just be patient and do the best research you can do. The truth of the matter is, let's say with regard to parapsychology, there are professional journals that have been publishing in this field continuously since the 1880s. And there are just literally hundreds, if not thousands, of case histories that are accumulating. Well, right now, we live in a social environment which is not friendly, and in spite of the good data that exists, for the most part, the field is marginalized, and there are, on the other hand, the popular interest is enormous, while academics tend to be hostile to the field and tend to treat it with a horse laugh, which can hurt anybody trying to get a promotion in their career or trying to seek funding. Probably about 2/3 of people in the general community have had these experiences and are very interested in them. And sooner or later, the pendulum will swing back the other way, and we'll be in a social environment which is conducive to more research being done. And in the meantime, it's fair to say that the quality of the research gets better and better year by year, because the researchers themselves are always looking to improve their methodology, and additionally, they're subject to constant attack from skeptics on the outside, not even true skeptics, but scoffers who are looking for any excuse to dismiss this research and occasionally come up with good criticisms so that the research gets improved and refined decade by decade.
Do you expect to be around when we get some final answers to any of this?
No, not in this body. Probably. I hope I come back in another body so that I can see what goes on. But it's likely to be. William James put it this way. He's one of my intellectual heroes. He's the founder of American psychology, but he was also a parapsychology researcher, and he said that we can't measure progress in this field decade by decade as we would with other fields. We have to measure progress by the century and half century. So I think it could easily be 100 or 200 years before things really start taking off. I'm hopeful that all of the videos that I am producing now will be around when that happens, so that a generation of researchers in the future will have access to what the best minds and the best scientists of today are thinking.
One more segment with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove with Gene and Chris. You're in Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
We also have swag. We have all these exclusive Paracast things that you can buy. We've got 60 or so different items, and entails t-shirts, sleeves for notebook computers, iPad cases, mouse pads, the Paracast Jumbo tote bag, all sorts of t-shirts and jackets and stuff like that for men and women. We have a Paracast aluminum water bottle. All this stuff, you go to store.theparacast.com, store.theparacast.com. What makes it special is that the items are the best quality, great t-shirts, fabrics, and they have our official logo on them. That's what makes them special, in multiple sizes and colors. We even have stuff for children, stuff for women, stuff for men. We have all sorts of sizes, like small up to X large. A lot of good stuff. That's the swag from the Paracast. If you go to store.theparacast.com, stop by and take a shopping tour.
Fully cooked, ready-to-eat bacon. I'm talking thick, meaty, center-cut presidential bacon. Savory and delicious. I buy some, I use some, I store some. Awesome. No refrigeration needed with a 10-year shelf life. NASA-pack technology. Bacon. Fully cooked, fully hydrated, ready to eat right from the packed bacon or warm and served. Life-saving, ready-to-eat bacon. 10-year shelf life bacon. Ships free at fullycookedbacon.com. Fullycookedbacon.com.
Are the answers to your present and future hidden in your past? Akashic readings help you learn to unlock the answers for love, finances, weight loss, self-esteem, confusion, grief and loss, and more. Akashic email readings by Dr. Kelly Maroon, Ph.D. are specially priced right now. Learn more at Dr. Kelly Maroon's website, akashicuniversal.com, spelled AKASHIC universal.com. Change your life today. Become one with your true path with intention on purpose. Visit akashicuniversal.com.
Why be held hostage by your wireless carrier for 2 years? What if you had no contract, no activation fees, no hidden costs, tracking, tracing, harvesting customer data, or draconian gimmicks? All on America's largest 4G LTE, GSM, and Sprint networks. Introducing Pix Wireless. Activate your Sprint, AT&T, or unlock GSM phones with Pix and choose from an arsenal of monthly plans or build your own. Starting at only $2.99 per month. Get connected now. Call or click 1-866-205-9513 or pixwireless.com, spelled PIXwireless.com. Pick Pix and get connected today.
Dr. Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize for discovering how cells breathe. He also discovered how normal cells turn into tumor cells. He discovered the one prime cause of cancer was cellular oxygen deficiency. Dr. Joanna Budwig built upon the work of Dr. Warburg and discovered how to feed the cells to overcome this oxygen deficiency. She found that it was the sulfur in the cottage cheese that would mix with fresh pressed flax oil that the flax oil would become emulsified and more readily absorbed. Flax oil delivered in this manner was able to restore oxygen transfer to all cells of the body. Now there's a new method of pressing seed oils that produces the highest quality, zero oxidation, undamaged seed oils. The results on these seed oils alone are amazing. Now add our Life Force Enhanced One World Whey Protein Powder that is much higher in the sulfur amino acids than cottage cheese is, and you have a winning combination to confer health and energy like never before. Call 888-988-3325 or visit sacredseedoils.com. That's sacredseedoils.com.
This is Dan Pilla. Do you owe the IRS money you can't pay? Are tax debts crippling you? I've defended people from the IRS for over 30 years. I've helped thousands, and I can help you too. I wrote the book on IRS settlement, and I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a hopeless case. Call 800-34-NO-TAX to finally get free of IRS debt. With the IRS's new programs, there's never been a better time to solve your problem. Call 800-34-NO-TAX. That's 800-34-NO-TAX, or my website, danpilla.com.
Hi, this is Joshua P. Warren, author of The Poor Man's Paranormal, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
With Gina and Chris, we're back with our final visit with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove for this time out, and we hope to have him back in the future. Chris has been having an awful time with his Skype connection. There's something over there, some kind of poltergeist or something that's taken control. Chris?
Yeah, extremely frustrating, Gene. Sorry, Jeffrey, we've been having reoccurring problems. I'm showing a 1 meg upload speed, so we shouldn't really be having the problems that we're having. But
right now, you're okay. Just continue.
Yeah. What advice would you give, the up and coming generation who have interest in this subject, but because of the stigma attached to them, may be reluctant to bring their, hopefully considerable talents to bear on these subjects? What sort of advice would you give them to circumvent, the current stigma that's attached to the whole subjects?
Well, the conventional advice that almost every parapsychologist will give you is first establish yourself in some conventional field like psychology or psychotherapy or philosophy or medicine. And then once you've gotten tenure and you're no longer threatened, then you can do parapsychology research and your income won't suffer. as a result. I did not follow that advice myself, and I can look back, by getting a doctoral degree in parapsychology, it made it almost impossible for me to have a conventional academic career, but I have no regrets. I have had an interesting life in the media and in the world of business. Maybe I've been fortunate. I would encourage people to follow the advice that Joseph Campbell gave me when I interviewed him, and I asked him what advice would he give to young people, and he said, follow your passion.
Your bliss.
Yeah, do that. And I think if you do that, and if you're a well-grounded, healthy individual, things will work out one way or another.
Now, you mentioned being a conventional academic was difficult. Because of your degree, did they look at your degree and say, you're a doctor of what?
Not only was I a doctor of parapsychology, that made it hard enough, but because I had done the UFO research with Ted Owens, the PK man, I was pretty much stigmatized even by parapsychologists as someone whose work was beyond the fold. There was no possibility that I would have been hired by any of the few remaining institutions that had money to hire people in parapsychology. But I made my way. I can say this, that I'm glad that I was true to myself in the process. I think I benefited from it, and instead of being hired by other people for their academic programs, I helped to create new ones. I helped found the University of Philosophical Research in Los Angeles, for example, and taught parapsychology there for many years. And I helped found a program for ministers in the now known as the Centers for Spiritual Living, formerly the Church of Religious Science, where we set up an institute called the Holmes Institute, where I teach parapsychology, and it's required now for all ministers in training with that organization. So there's usually, when one door closes, another one opens somewhere.
Well, that's certainly very good and very helpful. Helpful indeed. What about young people who want to get involved in exploring the strange and unknown?
Well, I would suggest that they pay special attention to the academic literature, to the serious researchers in the field, and frankly, I think one of the very best of all resources for that is the video channel that I've been working on for the last 15 months and that I've mentioned earlier, the newthinkingaloud.com and newthinkingaloud.org. There's a wealth of resources there, hundreds of books that are available, and over 150 interviews with leading researchers and thought leaders in the field. It's an excellent resource for people. And it's free, every bit of it.
Of course, getting people interested also when they're young. They got so many other pursuits.
And it's not for everybody. Not everybody is going to have a career in parapsychology. I think maybe 1 or 2% of the population has a real serious interest in this field. But in a country of 300 million people, we're talking about several million.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Barry Taff, Lloyd Auerbach, both of who we've had on the show, they have managed to avoid the pitfalls and pratfalls and gone on to at least make a bit of a mark. I think Lloyd especially. So, there is hope out there. And again, I think we are seeing I think the generation of kind of boring old farts that, have no time for this subject matter are, retiring and passing on. And I think we're going to see a renaissance of interest in these subjects, and I think they will become more and more mainstream as time marches on.
I think it's fair to say that society has gone through enormous changes. We're about to elect, I believe, the first female president of the United States. And now gay marriage, which was unthinkable only a decade or two ago, is now the law of the land. And these changes affect everything, and including the openness to the inner realms of the psyche.
So we're getting better and better at this.
There's hope.
I'm very hopeful.
What do you think, this is kind of a final question because we have to wrap up soon. All the people involved in physical UFOs disclosure, do you think the government knows any of this stuff that you look into?
I did a series of interviews with John Alexander, who is a UFO researcher and the author of a book called UFOs, Myths and Realities, former colonel in the military who, while he was in the military at a time when he had top secret clearance, made an effort to determine what the government really did know. And he's quite sincere in his belief that actually the government knows very, very little, that the government is not capable of really doing much serious investigation in the UFO and paranormal areas. And I'm inclined to think that he's onto something. Now, it's always possible that there are programs around, secret black programs of which he was never made aware, but I'm inclined to think that that's the sort of thing for conspiracy theorists, that there's very little evidence to support that.
We've had him on the show a couple of times, and after being kind of at odds with him for many years, I've actually gotten to know him and consider him a bit of a casual friend. We spend a little time together. I do think he's sincere, but again, people that think that the government can't keep secrets, I think are wrong. The government is able to keep secrets, but I think when it comes to UFO information, I think a lot of that is probably in the private sector and the aerospace companies and out of the reach of FOIA and the purview of the U.S. government.
Jeffrey Mishlove, tell our listeners if they want more information about what you do, tell us where to go.
Okay, one more time, go to www.newthinkingaloud, all one word, .com or .org to visit the video channel that I've been producing interviews on for the last 15 months.
You can find us on Twitter if you simply look for the Paracast. Look for the Paracast on Twitter. Look for 2, not 1, 2 official Paracast fan clubs on Facebook. And of course, we want you also to look for the Paracast Plus. It's the special best way to listen to the Paracast, and we give you all the extra features. So first, there's the commercial-free version of this show, better quality audio. We also offer the exclusive After the Paracast podcast. We give you some show transcripts and lots of other stuff. It's all available for a low subscription rate, and for long subscriptions like 5 years or more, we give you free ebooks from me and Chris. So it's definitely worth checking out. Plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove, thank you for joining us on the Paracast.
My pleasure. Thank you both.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg and Christopher O'Brien, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.